as the team and complete my report. So with the Ukiah Valley Area Plan, the initial focus was actually on addressing that, because that had most recently come to its state in front of the board. And the decision was made to review all past efforts, but to reframe the project and start the creation of the document over, using a series of interactive community workshops. And that was the strategy that was looked at initially. And I think that in looking at where we are with the Ukiah Valley Area Plan, the strategy that was developed, and as you know, with planning projects, there are any number of strategies you can use to try and hold that public discussion. But the thought was, by identifying the discussion areas up front, attention could be focused on that, discussion could be focused on that, and it would be very clear where the decision points were. And so that was the strategy here, was to be really clear about where the decision points were, then to give sufficient background information to the board, to the policymakers, that those decisions could be made. And the product that will be coming forward to you later this year has those decision points very clearly identified, and there will be a range of options that the board can select from in moving forward on that. The general plan process was dusted off and essentially relaunched. There had been a framework developed a couple of years earlier, and it continued to be in play, but what we had to do the catch-up on was the thorough review by the Planning Commission, more outreach to the communities, and so I think people got kind of tired of that framework that lingered on for a number of years before we were able to get to a revised draft. And you've seen that revised draft, and the next step in that process now is the final draft. With the housing element came with its own accompanying lawsuit, and it could be characterized as kind of being under the gun for a playbook that was written by other people, and essentially written by committee, in every sense of that word. So the planning team scrambled to determine the highest priority items and to work through them. And the biggest item was the 50-acre rezone. And with the exception of the properties that are bundled into the Ukiah Valley Area Plan for rezoning, we do have that 50 acres, or including those properties, we have that 50 acres that's been reached per the criteria that is in the plan and with the state. The Mendocino Town Plan, I would characterize that as we're kind of sticking our toe in the water and saying, oh yeah, the water's fine, come on in. The focus at this point is solely on data review and doing whatever updating can be done without requiring amendment of the town plan. I think where you go now with the Mendocino Town Plan and the local coastal plan update is a future discussion of the board. What the planning team is doing is simply focusing on the data review and anything preparatory to that. We have had one community meeting, and there's another one to come. So the timeline that you have in front of you, that I didn't hand away my copy. Just real quickly, I've apologized before for the garish colors. At some point, I'm sure someone will start over with those. But you can see that it's divided into the 4 categories of the general plan update, Ukiah Valley Area Plan, the housing element, and everything associated with that, and then the coastal plan updates. I would turn your attention to the 3rd page, which starts January 1st to March 31st, 2009, and that's where we are now. And just a quick preview of what we're doing over the next quarter here is that the final draft general plan and the final draft EIR will be released publicly the last week in February, and specifically the Thursday of the last week in February. And then the first week in March, subject to your calendar setting later today, either March 3rd or March 5th, there will be a joint meeting of the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission and a presentation of that final draft plan and EIR. No decisions will be made. It's not a public hearing or anything else like that. It's kind of a recap of these are all the comments we got, this is what was where the rewrite was focused, this is what it looks like now, as a way of kind of orienting people so that when they do their review, of the final draft, they have a sense of what they're looking at, and we've found that to be a helpful process in the past. During the month of March, the Planning Commission then will review the final drafts, and this says March 30th. That's another one that's subject to your scheduling later today. I believe now we're looking at April 6th. And so, again, I didn't want to change this from what you had already received, but this will be updated after your master schedule is finalized this afternoon. So I believe right now we're looking at the public hearing being on April 6th. So that's the flow through for the general plan update. And at the end of this schedule, there is a disclaimer that says things happen and schedules can change. As far as the Ukiah Valley Area Plan goes, we have been assembling a lot of background information, and particularly in the area of water analysis or assessment, and adding the greenhouse gas portions, et cetera. And those will start to get the draft out into circulation in April, May. So that's what we're looking at for Ukiah Valley Area Plan, and at that point, there's a process that will be followed through from the first draft to the final draft and the conclusion. The housing element, as you know, we're working off of parts of the old housing element. We have through this year to do that, and any items that are not completed can be added to the next housing element, or in consultation and negotiation with the state, can be determined that we'd like to substitute something that we think would be more effective for something that hadn't been completed. I would characterize the things that haven't been completed are some proposed code changes, and I think the development of those code changes will be enhanced with the planning team being in the planning and building department. So I think that's a good move there. The new housing element is due to the state on August 17th, or by the end of August, and those dates are somewhat fluid because there's an order in which you talk with the state, they give you feedback, and then it comes to the board for final adoption. And then finally, with the coastal plan updates, as I said, we're focusing on data review right now. We'll complete that second meeting, and in March, we'll report back to you on what's been accomplished. But at that point, sometime in the next 6 months or so, there will be a discussion, I think, with the board as to where you want to go with any formal update of the Mendocino Town Plan and the coastal plan updates. And one consideration now that I'm sure you're aware of is just the financial situation, and whether or not we've got the resources to embark on something like that. So that's the timeline, and I guess I'll finish and then you can ask any questions you have. So on the occasion of the handover of the planning team to the Planning and Building Services Department, I wanted to recognize the skills and the efforts of the planning team. And what it represents to me, and I think to you as well, is the kind of exploratory and entrepreneurial spirit that they've brought to this endeavor. I think is something that we would like all county employees to be looking at as well. And it was a new project, it was a new way of doing things, and these folks were game. They were willing to kind of step out on saying, okay, well, being a team together, taking on some very high-profile projects, and we'll see what we can do. And what they could do, they brought a lot of skills to the table. So going through each of those real quickly, Patrick Ford, someone that I would describe as plays well with data. And as you know, he's from debugging traffic studies to performing the greenhouse gas analyses on a number of things, to developing maps, working with Vail and Leaf on GIS, writing significant portions of these plans. He's the backbone of the hard data in this team. Diana Hershey is someone who plays well with others. She